Hello and welcome to the August 2015 Wildfire Performance Recap Workshop. How about that show last night? That was amazing. That was amazing. I had the privilege of being the show producer, which sounds glamorous, but really it just means head gopher. The job of show producer is get all the people and all the things all the people need and shove them all together and then stand back and trust that it will happen. And because we had so many amazingly talented people, our amazingly talented and experienced stage manager and lighting director and stagehands and production assistants and videographer and camera assistants, and like by the time the show started, there were people in my crew that people in my crew had recruited and I didn't even know they were in my crew. It was just like the whole machine got set in motion, and because of the amazing talent and skill and dedication of everyone involved, this juggernaut just starts moving, and then a show comes out, which is just like, I was in the back and I'm like, that happened? Oh my God. So, and that's really the key to being the producer, is recruiting great people, making sure every one of them has what they need at every stage of the process, checking in with them frequently to make sure their technical needs are met, but just check in and be like, how are you? How you feeling? How you doing? That just like that emotional check-in is probably as important as the production check-ins, just to make sure people are having a good time and it's going well. So it was such a privilege. I will turn you over to Peter here shortly, unless any of you want to ask me anything. That's really the job. Pretty awesome to get to do it. Thank you so much for the opportunity. And here's your stage manager, Peter.
This was the first time I had stage managed here. I've done a number of other theater things, but first time I'd done it here, which was a challenge for me only because I didn't know where everything was that I had to pull from, and I didn't necessarily even know who I needed to call on or who I could call on to help. When the time for the show came, I'll let you guys know. This is everything I did. I talked to performers as they were going on to make sure everybody knew who was going to be next. There was a little bit of a drastic emergency at the fuel dump, which I don't think most of you guys were even aware of, which is a good sign. But we took care of that. Actually, Andrew took care of that. And I turned on the lights for Mark. But the reason that was all that I had to do during the show is because, just like Daddy just said, I just handed off everything to everybody, made sure everything was covered, and everybody who had to do things did it, which was phenomenal. I was there ready to fix a problem, which is kind of what a stage manager generally has to do if something came up. But you guys all did what you had to, and that includes the performers who were professional enough to, frankly, always be ready. They were asking me, is it time for me to go? Yeah, sure. Is it time for me to fuel? Yeah, you probably should fuel now. I didn't really have to go grab somebody and say, hey, where are you? It's time to go on. You guys were all following everything through pretty well, so it was very professional performance all the way, both from my helpers, from the producer above me, as well as the performers themselves. So let's go through the performers. I want to ask you guys a couple of questions about your performance, the song you chose, what is it that made you choose that, and what your creative process was, so that the people who view this can hopefully create their own creative process for the next performance, for the next Wildfire, for years after that. Question?
Dale was telling me I should blurt out my question.
What is your question, Lisa?
As a learning experience for everybody, you said that there was an emergency at the fuel pump. Would you mind telling us what the emergency was and what was done about it, and maybe, like, I don't know how serious it was, but whatever you have to say about it, maybe what you would do differently next time?
Well, the first thing I'll say is when I say an emergency at the fuel dump, first and foremost, it was not a danger type of emergency. It was an emergency only in the sense that it threatened the continuity of the performance. What we had was a fuel dump that didn't have a lot of fuel. So I don't know if there was a spare can there, if Tiff had set up another canister, but the can that was in the fuel dump, by the time we got to Nikki and Sarah, who were the fourth performers, they couldn't get their wicks wet. They could not put the wicks far enough into the can to get gas onto them. By the time I got over there, Andrew had already bolted off to the fuel dump to grab more fuel. My only choice then was to sit and wait, see whether or not he was coming back in time. I was watching the performer before that, and thank God it was Tesla who was just rocking away, and your performance went on for a good time, and everybody was having a great time watching you. So as a result, by the time you were done, and yeah, Meredith, I was going to have to warn you, you might have to go a little bit longer. I was taking a look at the order to see if I had to reorganize the order on the fly. But before I had to make that decision, Andrew returned with another fuel can. Crisis was averted. That was it. Obviously, if it was more of a safety emergency, then it would have been dealt with differently. But that was the emergency. Handled pretty quickly, not even by me. It was handled by my assistants. Just the way it should be. Any other questions about the drastic emergency that nearly crashed our performance? Yeah, good job, Andrew. I'll start with Meredith as our MC.
I don't want to go.
I'll start with Meredith, our MC.
Yeah! Oh yeah!
What on God's green earth possessed you to do this? Speak into the mic clearly.
I feel like
You're being recorded.
That's a big question.
It is a big question.
So I've spent the past 3 years developing my poetry, my spoken word art, and first time I came to Wildfire was a year ago, and I saw the MC, and I was like, oh, that's something I think I might be able to do one day. Continue doing my own performing, and started also spinning fire around the same time. And then, you know, in May, I had the opportunity to drive Dale home, and in the car we talked, and I told him, like, I'm thinking about maybe applying, and he was like, go. And that first push, I wouldn't have done this without him. So, what on God's green earth made me decide to do this, it was kind of just bubbling in the back of my head, like, maybe one day, maybe. Being able to have that conversation, have someone with the confidence in me to do it, that's what pushed me forward. And God, what a ride! It was incredible.
What you did was so significantly different from anything I've seen here, and I've been coming for about 3 years, that it really must have taken a lot of confidence. When you ended up taking the stage, especially for the intro, the audience didn't know how to react because they didn't really know what's coming to them. And even if they did know, like I said, it had never been done here before. How would a crowd react to something like that? How would this crowd react to that? In the end, they followed. And as I was telling you during the show, there were great moments when you had absolute silence. Not bored silence, I'm not entertained silence, but I'm raptured with attention. I need to watch this silence. And I don't want to make a noise because it's going to distract from it. It must have taken a lot of confidence to get that on stage, to, I can't say know it would work, but at least hope it would work. What gave you that confidence? Oh, and I'm asking this on behalf of the people who might have other crazy ideas of doing things.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think the trick is to, whatever you're putting out on stage, know you have it locked in. I memorize my poems more often than not, especially when I know I'm performing for a large group of people. Trust in your words. Trust in what you wrote. Trust that if you do forget the exact wording or the specific adjective, that maybe a better one will come to you. Performing poetry, at least, is part of the writing process too. So doing something different, you don't want to do something so big and crazy that you might lose people. And the piece I wrote for this, I kept it at the root of what it is. I didn't need to use like big flowery metaphor or like SAT words. Like I didn't need to I didn't have to impress like poets. I knew I was writing for spinners. So if any of you guys, to make an analogy, if any of you guys perform spinning anything professionally, you know that if you go out to a crowd of like normal everyday folk, you don't have to like pull out your best tricks to wow them. Whereas if you're performing for spinners, you really have to start pushing the envelope. For this, I thought when I'm thinking about writing the intro, I didn't have to push the envelope in terms of the words of it, but I knew I had to push the performance aspect. That's why there was the costuming, which is something I've never done before for a piece, and to make it a little more theatrical. So there was another piece that was easy to relate to. Not only do you have the words that are coming out, you also have this costuming and the theatrics of it that is, it's just another thing to connect to. So if you ever want to do anything like that's never been done before, make it so that people will find something to connect to. Be able to find things that other people resonate with. Be inclusive when you're writing towards an audience because this audience is so diverse. Just keep that in mind, that you want to hit every single person that's out there. And that's my best advice for that, I guess.
One more question.
Sure.
Yeah, it was a great success. Phenomenal.
Yeah.
It was loved. What would you change?
I don't know if I would have worn heels. Yeah, fuck that rock, straight up. What would I have changed? I don't know. Maybe have like more coordinated beavers, but I thought they did excellent. I can't control that. They did an awesome job. The one thing I would probably change would be to take more time before the show to just chill. Because I was a little rushed at the end, like, oh, everyone's intro's right, and making sure I had the order and everything like that, and, you know, putting my costume on and all that. So I was a little rushed. I felt a little rushed and a little pressure towards the end. So when I first stepped out on stage, I was like, as I was walking, I'm like, I'm not ready. I still have like shit to do. Make sure to like add in time to just like chill out before the show, because I didn't do that. So I was a little like, I was a little anxious.
Any questions?
Yeah. Peter, can you repeat the questions? Into
Yes,
the
I'll
mic?
repeat the questions.
Meredith, you didn't say your own name
Yeah.
on stage.
Yeah.
I've never seen
Yeah.
an MC so completely remove their own ego from the performance,
Yeah.
and yet still have confidence in their presence. What was that decision about not saying your own name about you out here? What was that about?
The question is, it was observed, and I actually asked you as well after your intro. I reminded you gently, hey, you forgot to tell the audience your name. And which you gently introduced me and said, hey, I didn't want to. It was an artistic decision. Why?
So there are a few reasons for that. The first is I really like the idea that anybody can be up here and do this. And this is put together and run by our community, so anybody who wants to be on the stage can be on the stage. All you have to do is apply. The other thing is even though I didn't have to say my name, everything about my performance was me. I made my costume, I wrote the poem, the storytelling is something I've been working on. You know, I sang, I did everything, minus like actually spinning a prop. All the things I did creatively are a huge part of me and part of what brought me here ultimately. So my decision not to say my name, I did want to try to remove my ego from it, because this show is not, it's not my show, it's our show, and I don't think, you didn't need to know my name to know who I was while I was up here. And one of the things I did do also to add into that was all my reactions to the performers' pieces were authentic. I didn't plan anything. I just came out and was like, fucking this shit, great, right? Because that's how I wanted to react to it immediately and be as me as possible here without being like, yo, Meredith was good. And think that was necessary. Thank you.